ThatNERDSoul.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for coming out to Wunderman Comics presents Time Travel in Television and Comics. I am your moderator, Nate Wunderman, the Chief Comics Officer of Wunderman Comics, available at WundermanComics.com. Wunderman with a U, not with an O or an A, please. We have to the side, over here, are my esteemed guests. So what we'll do is I'll introduce them, they'll briefly say what they're doing, and then we're going to get on with this bad boy. Sound good, guys? All
Yes.
right. So, to my immediate left, we have, and please introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing.
Speaking of the mic.
Yeah, speaking to the mic.
I'm Joel Thompson. Right now, I'm working on several projects that are in development. I think one of them I can talk about a little bit. It's a dystopian story that takes place in the near future, and it involves a water shortage. And so we'll see. I mean, development projects, they could disappear by the time this segment is over, or
Hey, that's
they
how
could go on and
shows
flourish.
roll, man.
So I don't want to delay. I'll hand it over to Malcom.
Awesome. I'm a huge fan of that. That's great. Whatchamacallit? My name is Malcom Barrett. My time travel experience is, oh, look at that! That's the stuff that I've been on. I don't even need to speak. These pictures. What is this? I'm an actor, a rapper, a playwright, and the king of the nerds, question mark. I think that's accurate. No, that can't be accurate at all. But yeah, so I don't know, I'm working on stuff and I do things and then, you know, that's it. I'm a freaking nerd. Let's do this.
My name is Hannibal Tabu. Hello. I am a writer, journalist, sometimes DJ. I'm really an awful person, so I'm sorry about that if I've done anything horrible to you recently. I write Time Core for Wunderman Comics, which is how I got on this panel. Obviously, it's a connection.
Okay.
See, we're working out. I've also won the top 2012 Top Cow Talent Hunt, and I was named the 2019 Cultural Trailblazer by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. And I think those are the big high notes.
That's pretty big.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm not at your level. I'm working on it.
I'm not a cultural trailblazer.
But you're the king of the nerds.
Question mark.
Okay, all right, so
You gotta introduce yourself, Nate.
oh, I am sorry. My name is Nate Wunderman. I am the Chief Comics Officer at Wunderman Comics. You see, that's some of my work up there. It's available at WundermanComics.com. We've got, let's see, about 55, 56 issues in current release at your favorite digital comics places, Comixology, Amazon KDP, Hoopla Digital, they rock, support your library, and several other places as such. And as Hannibal mentioned, I hired him to write quite a few issues of Time Corp that I created. Okay, so, but you don't care about that. You want to get into the subject matter, which is about time travel. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we have, let's get into our first question, which I would say, you know what? Let's ask Malcom. So, wow, okay. You worked on a show with involving time travel and that sort of stuff. So,
Yes, I did.
yeah, well, you know, we can't assume everybody, you know, has had their coffee yet. Mine, not really. So, how, for your show, when you came about and were doing, how did you prepare for it? And what sort of research did you do? And just how did it affect your performance?
Yeah. I did no research, but only because, for those who maybe aren't familiar, but I did a show called Timeless, and basically, and you know, basically the premise of it is someone hijacked a time machine at a place where I was working on. I was one of the inventors of the time machine, and so he was basically a terrorist. He took it to sort of ruin America, and then my team would have to go back in time to try and find him and stop him before he ruined everything.
And so the reason I didn't do that much research only because my characters, actually no, I did. My character's background was in science and not history, so I didn't do that much historical research before I joined. But I wound up doing stuff when I joined because, you know, one of the benefits of doing this show is that we looked at a lot of overlooked historical moments in history, a lot involving women, a lot involving people of color. And so it's interesting because we would have conversations about certain dialogue and aspects because in ways we were dealing with things that people hadn't seen or hadn't dealt with in a very long time, or hadn't dealt with because they're scared. And so, you know, we're suddenly dealing with Wendell, who's the first, you know, black NASCAR driver. We're dealing with Nana Lima, and so, you know, who's this Native American warrior. And so there's different ideas and principles that folks haven't gotten into, but there was one where we went into, we're going to, I'm blanking on her name, but she was a woman suffragette, a white female, a white woman suffragette. Who?
Susan B. Anthony?
No, I'm blanking. I'll look up IMDb. But there was an issue where there was a line where it said something about her calling her the Martin Luther King of women's suffrage. And I remember looking up because, you know, for me it was a very loaded statement because she separated herself from having black women join in the protest. Yeah. And it was very purposeful on her part in that she was like, you know, we need to take this step first. And you know, that's another barrier or hurdle to go over. And one of the reasons I had an issue with that is that I was like, well, that's not Martin Luther King thing. Martin Luther King wasn't like, we have to do blacks first. He said, we're doing the working class first. This is the people's thing. So there was, I had to look that up. I had to do the research on that person at that time. And in order to have that discussion with my fellow actors and the writers on there. So that's the most research. Other than that, I try to remain as fresh-faced as that character would when being introduced to all these scenarios and situations.
Okay, and thank you. All right, and
Fucking nailed that one.
Yeah. All right, now you're gonna have to follow up. I'm sorry to say.
That's hilarious.
And just, I would say, when you were on Krypton, what is it about time travel that really helped the show out, you think, from your POV, what you were doing on the show?
It gave us a lot more flexibility. It allowed us to play with the norm, or rather to play with the lore of the show, such that we could branch off and use certain known characters from the DC universe and be able to weave them in because because of the essence of the time travel, it made everything a lot more fluid. Because not only was it a time traveling story, the sequence had been broken in terms of what events had happened and who was where. And so once you're able to sort of bend those rules a little bit, it allowed more flexibility for us to go and be able to get Doomsday and go get Lobo, and to go and get Brainiac and have them all sort of converge at different points. So once we were able to have that, we could sort of pick and choose which characters we wanted to step in and what their launch point was going to be.
Cool. Wow, so it wound up being what you would see in the story as a flexing agent.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, I can't quite come. I don't know that. All right, Hannibal.
Yes, sir.
It is time for your question, my man.
Okay.
All right, where in Time Core you got into a bit of it, which I know, really not too subtle. Promo for my comic. You get into
Literally why we booked the panel.
I
mean, let's give her.
That's why we're here, partially. And you get into sort of how time travel works, and you have some characters explain that. Could you kind of dig into that and just...
Absolutely. One of the main characters I created was this kind of, she would be called a terrorist from the year 3114. And she was so upset at the boring, controlled nature of her world that she just wanted to get free of it. So she was able to manipulate some information and discover time travel on her own. Travel back to 2657, where there was another person who was kind of agitating against the idea of the time should be this way and I shouldn't be able to change it the way I want. She gets there and he's like, you can't be the future. You can't travel to the future. That's impossible. She's like, it's not my future. It's my past. I can go anywhere in the past I want. That's set. But for you, those tachyons haven't settled in yet. So if you don't figure that out, you're not gonna be able to do it. But if you could step outside of that, if you could go to an organization, which is the celestial bureaucracy, which is behind the whole time court, you could move beyond the boundaries of space-time as it's normally done. And he was like, what? So they then end up fighting against this organization who's trying desperately to keep time going in a nice straight linear path so none of us all, go melt or turn into, Dolly sort of pictures. And these two people are like, yeah, screw that, we're gonna change time any way we feel like it, there's nothing you can do to stop us. And those two parties end up clashing with each other over the course of, I wrote 12 issues. I think the third one is out now? Is it the third one?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Issue 13 is out now. And that's where these two people meet for the first time and kind of explain the mechanics of, this is how time travel is going to work for us, and here's how we're going to screw it up for everybody else, and they can suck it.
Yep. That's pretty. And okay, and then just sort of like a bit of let's see. Okay, follow up would be just for what, and when you got into writing, just and then we'll get you guys. Is what period did you really like getting into?
My favorite thing was a chance to form the future in a way that it hasn't been seen. One of the things that was very frustrating for me growing up watching shows like The Jetsons was like, I'm not there. If I look at Star Trek, okay, well, Uhura looks like me, but does she have a brother? Does she have friends? So I was able to craft a future that was more like the way I thought it should be. And admittedly, it turned out pretty badly for most of those people because
they're all the minorities.
Well, no, because I did something really bad in the issue after this that I'm not supposed to talk about, but there's a lot of fire. So much fire.
Fire.
And, but in any case, I was able to craft things in a certain way that was very important to me. I was able to do that looking at that way. I was able to take Nat Turner's wife, Cherry, and have her at the Berlin conference. And she was not happy. She was not happy to be at the Berlin conference while they were dividing up Africa under the colonial power. So to being able to do that, but not in a preachy way, but in a story-based way, that, these people were, in the same way as Rittenhouse, trying to affect history.
I got the reference.
Affect history to their own ends and manipulate things to come out in their benefit. This is not a new idea in time travel. I ain't come up with it. It's brilliant. Maybe you guys came up with it. Did you? Okay. I didn't do the research. But it's a common theme that I wanted to manipulate, and I've definitely seen, you've seen Doctor Who, you've seen lots of other places. So being able to visit all those different places and play with, as Malcolm says, like, there's no place in the past in time travel that black people are going to have a good time. To be able to use that line, like, I was like, oh, let me see about that, let me show some, to be able to test that in a book was very, very rewarding.
Okay. Malcolm, how is time travel achieved in Timeless?
Time travel is achieved in Timeless. What did we use? What did you say? Yes, well, yeah. Well, you know what? So, I'm sucks. I haven't done this research in a while. So, yeah, we have the time machine, right? We have two time machines. We have a lifeboat and a mothership. The mothership is like the huge awesomeness, and then the lifeboat is like the piece of crap thing, right? When Han Solo is flying. And so, we go into the things. We try and loosely base it off of science because there is some science around time travel and wormholes and folding time onto itself and different theories about that. So that's the vein under which we did it. But it's also interesting to see how I'm always interested in time rifts. Like ours did the thing of if someone travels in time, the amount of time that is passing in modern times is passing at the same rate in which they have landed there. So if they just
Yes. So
Yeah. That's. So I think on our show we would have in the headquarters there was a clock of like that started when the jump had. So that that's always an interesting thing, which is like, and then people have all these opinions about it where it's just like, no, time would do this and blah blah. And it's like Sean Reiner, who was one of the creators, they were like, time travel is one of the few things where everyone has an opinion about a thing that doesn't exist. Where everyone is absolutely sure of how it would work and there's no real thing for it. But there's, as an actor, you sort of rationalize everything. There's like these theories of like, time always finds a way to like find itself. It goes to the like water around a pebble. It goes to the least resistant outcome, and so that's sort of how time travel works in our show.
Cool. And for Joel, for your recently show, it says Doc saw it and Adam Strange used it. First of all, how? And DC kind of something called a hypertime theory. Did you use that in this show for the alternate realities, or did you go for the singular timeline?
The former. With respect to Zod and Strange and Adam Strange, they both use different technologies. Adam Strange had the Zeta Beam device, and that was coordinated by other people that he would communicate to. That felt a little bit more quantum leapish in some respects in the way that we used it. And the General Zod had been thrown back into the Phantom Zone. Superman presumably had defeated him because he'd gotten out before Superman had thrown him back in there. And when he was in there, the way we took it on Krypton was to have Val already be in the Phantom Zone because he had been banished there. Val had a design or had a particular device to get himself out of the Phantom Zone. And before he could use it, and this happened off screen, Zod was able to get the device from Val, and Zod was able to exit the Phantom Zone, and in doing so, that flung him back to Krypton at that point. So both of them used different vehicles or different methods to travel through time. And as far as the latter part of the question, the hyper time,
hypertime theory.
Hypertime theory. That was something that we were kind of keeping close to the vest. We were keeping that under wraps because we were going to, in our third season, and probably by the series finale, we were leaving the door open to sort of shock the audience that the things sort of lined back up for a being to land on Earth, but that being would not have been the Superman that we all know and love. That could have been a Superwoman of a different ethnicity.
Bizarro's gonna make the comeback.
Yeah. It could have been. It also could have been a deal where Cam Welsh, the showrunner, had shared this on Twitter. If anyone happened to catch it, that with Brainiac having taken Jor-El in the actual series that we were doing, then Brainiac would have taken Jor-El to Earth, and he would have passed by the yellow sun. So in so doing that would have made Jor-El a close version to Superman that we understand. Except the problem is, who would be raising Jor-El? Brainiac.
Oh,
Right?
Oh my
God. So there would have been some problems there. So that was the path that we were going. And so in that respect, we were sort of keeping that card hidden. So we weren't saying up front that we were splintering off to a different universe. But it's sort of, it really, and it's not that out there because within the DC universe there are the Elseworld stories, series of stories, which is the version of What If in the Marvel universe. So that's my long answer to you.
That's a big freaking reveal of the panel, dude!
Hey,
Yeah.
you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
Okay. Wow.
Wow. Ooh. All right. Excuse me. Let me get my breath a second. Okay. I would then just want to ask. So let's go for Hannibal, if you don't mind.
Sure. Which one do we do?
Let's go for what eras? For talk a little TC here. What other eras besides you think you'd like to write into? We hit up.
Well,
What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
I always desperately
This
wanted
could be a
to-
story pitch, you know. right here, right now. You never know.
Okay, well, shoot, if I can get this check. I always liked barbarian era stories, the sort of, sword and sorcery, fantasy style things. And
But what specific? Are we talking Central Asia? Are we talking the ones that are coming into Rome?
we're
at the fall
talking,
of Roman
we're talking about
Empire,
like the border of Eurasia where those cultures clashed most interestingly. and where two different cultures were sometimes like running up against each other and, oh, let's trade stuff, oh, let's murder each other, oh, let's, lots of different approaches to it.
That's that part of the world. Oh, there's quite a few good ones.
I agree.
You could do the Huns, you can do the Mongols.
Should I invoice you now? Should I invoice you now?
No, no editorial decision has been made.
I thought we made another announcement there. But okay, so that's one thing that I definitely want to do. I definitely wanted to explore more of the future, farther in the future, because getting to 3114 gave me some ideas, but I didn't think that was the end of the line for humanity. So I wanted to see what other dreams may come in that regard, if you see what I'm saying there. To look at building these alternate futures, these possible futures that could, some are Roddenberry and utopian, some of them are, dystopian, some of them are on fire all the time, I don't know. And finding those balances in that, I think is more interesting than, always referring to the same Beatles songs that are supposed to be popular 1,000 years from now. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. So.
Okay. Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
And not just for Timeless, but any show, what did you most enjoy, what era, that's not ours, did you most enjoy doing and why? Clothing, the whole wardrobe, manner of speech, what was going on, the whole nine.
Well, probably, Timeless is probably going to give me the most expansive amount of time periods I've ever covered in my career, honestly, because, that was the fun part of the show, is that we never repeated a time period. And we were on for 2 years in a movie, so, we were literally in over, 20 some odd different periods. I'm going to combine what you said and you said together. There's two periods I liked. I liked when there's a period where we were going after Jesse James that I really liked because, one, I got to ride a horse for the first time, and it turns out I'm fucking dope at it.
You did not get thrown off a horse.
No. I rode a couple times at a couple different.
And they didn't fucking try to
get you? No. It was great, man. And that was cool, but also that thing of. So that was a really fun period because my character has a joke where it's just like, there's literally no time in America that's going to be, I'm black, there's literally no time in America that's going to be awesome for me, which is true, but the flip side of that is, which I loved about this, and, when I first joined the show, I got some flack or people talking shit or whatever vein it was coming from where people were like, what are you doing? Why are you going to do a time travel show? That's horrible for black folks. Like, where are you going to go? And what was awesome about doing the show is that, no, there's actually a lot of dope times, like throughout history with other impediments or obstacles. Like, we've created music and art and families. Like, the pictures don't show it, but we smiled.
The Mali Empire.
There's a million different stories that are out there. You're just not shown them all the time, or we're shown the same story over and over again. So that was the awesome part about that period, because we got to meet Bass Reeves, who, some people know or not, is this brother knows. So he was a black sheriff, one of the most successful ever. He was a black man, and it's who the Lone Ranger is said to be based off of. And there was a huge ton of black cowboys in America that we just don't share those stories about.
Close to a third of cowboys were black.
There we go. And then also Robert Johnson period was an awesome period because that was awesome just because of the stories and the blues music and all of that we got to show. That was just amazing. The set was just brimming because the people who played the musicians also had musician backgrounds. And so everyone was the set was just so joyous. To be in that environment, and I'm rarely in like a high budgeted all black environment. So like everyone was just like all through downtown. We're like, man, we did it, man. This is great. I love it. Everyone's here for each other. Like, you know what I mean? There's like little ciphers going on. You know what I mean? We're singing. It was like, you're very happy. So like that was a really enjoyable period, but the show in general was just amazing just because of clothes I got to wear and the experiences I got to have, multiple times I got to be on a horse and shooting guns and just have these experiences in this environment. So I think that was probably, the Robert Johnson episode was probably my most enjoyable just because of, we're in juke joints, you know what I mean? If you ever see, it was like, the Erykah Badu video, On and On, or whatever like that, and like you just the music and the heat and all of that was just like.
And especially with some of those fibers, like if it's wool. Or
Yeah. Oh, we were hot all the time. It was just, everything we were wearing was just hot.
I mean, I'm sure you might have heard like that old Eric von Stroheim, the Prussian Army. Did you guys get down to the Prussian Army underwear?
I'll be honest, I don't know the reference.
The silent film director one time so ran up a budget that he actually, for a scene with extras Prussian Army, actually ordered genuine Prussian Army underwear. And got him fired.
Yes.
Ergo, that's the joke.
That's funny. Yeah, we had, the worst clothes was Civil War. Civil War.
That's a lot of wool, which
There's
is
a
very
lot of
sweatable.
clothes and the boots are horrible. They're like, I think by then they weren't made to like curve left and right foot or something like that. I think that's what it was, something.
Wool
Don't
socks.
check me on that. Yeah, it was crazy.
But Roman Colleague are worse.
Okay. Are you in a lot of Roman Colleague?
I used to dress in that stuff.
This guy did it heavy.
He's got like going on.
He did it heavy.
He's got a lot going on.
All right, so now I'm sorry. Joel, just to make sure. All right, okay. Now, when you got with Krypton, you guys got cut off a bit.
Yeah.
So, is there anything with the show that you would, if you had a chance to do in other media, whether you write, comic, whatever, that you would like to put out there for the people to see? If you had the opportunity.
I probably would want to expand on the Doomsday story that we did, and I was fortunate enough to be front and center for that script.
It was twisted. That was twisted stuff, man.
Yeah, it was disturbed. But what we wanted to do was try to flesh out what the love story was, and flesh out. We wanted to speak to how the balance of your call to duty and how loyalty can sometimes be misplaced or be manipulated to do bad things. And so I wish we could, like, that story and that arc and capturing Krypton at that particular point, I wish we could have done like maybe a half an hour more or 2 hours of that, just to flesh out more of what that individual's life was and what the circumstances was, because it mirrored a lot of what we're facing today, because there was a betrayal in that episode, and there's been a recent betrayal of sorts, depending on how you look at it, with respects to conflicts happening elsewhere that our government has a hand.
Trump fucking up, y'all.
Like that's news.
Yes.
So please, as you were.
So in that area, I would love to expand on that a little more.
And how would you?
I would want to have more of an arc of what the life and the circumstances was of this person, and what led them to, what fed that loyalty, and how that loyalty was manipulated to now weaponize this person, and what he walked away from with respect to his wife and his family. Because what you have two people at two different stations. What we tried to make sure of was that because the Zods were warring and stuff in the present for Krypton, when we went back into the past, we wanted to show how the Zods actually at this point were fighting for good, and the L's, who are heroic in the present of Krypton, were actually fighting for bad in the past. So what we were trying to do was show how morality can shift, and alliances can shift, and perspectives change. So I would like to lean further into that and paint on a more broad canvas to be able to drive that home.
Okay. Cool. All right, and then let's see. Okay. Excuse me while I look at my notes. I'm sorry. I have to say, please be gentle. This is my first time moderating, so I'm having a couple moments of just trying to work through them. So please excuse me.
Nobody's dead yet. Fine.
Okay. All right. So, Malcolm, your character got killed off in a kind of messed up sort of way.
Yes.
And
Yes.
some other shocking stuff. So, with Ribbons, could you address that while we're here?
Sure. Spoiler alert. I die and then I come back
Like Jesus.
Well, hey, that kind of back thing, that's a nice one, goes through all sorts of mythology. Gilgamesh did it first.
There we go. Simpsons did it first.
Nerd Jesus.
No. Stupidest joke ever. Yeah, no, so I died and came back a lot. The show was very smart about, I think the show knew that certain people, my character was a very nice guy, a very, he was the sort of moral barometer for the show, and so I think whenever the show wasn't sure if we'd come back or not, they'd kill me, and then they'd wait for people to get mad, and then they would come back. So like, yeah, first year I think,
wow, you're a killing dummy?
yeah, I think first year, was it Capone killed me? I think so. Yeah, I think. Well, he almost killed me. Then it was a cliffhanger. But then I wound up surviving and then telling Gia that I loved her. And then I think very purposefully, the end of second season, they killed me. This time by was Anna Vershing's character, redhead. I can't remember. Yeah, I know her by her actual name. But yeah, they had her kill me, and I think that was very purposeful by them because they knew we were about to get canceled. And so like that was really crazy. Like the time travel thing was interesting for that because the way that they brought me back was like time travel is like never easy to explain. So yeah, so Wyatt and Lucy, who are the other two main characters, their characters from the future come back, and their characters are like clearly been through war and been through hell. They come back and they're like, look, you gotta save Rufus, you can do it. And so they have a second time machine that also has like, that can fly itself. So then they fly, but they've got to hurry up and solve the mission. But then this is a weird thing, right? This is a weird thing where people think they know how time travel is supposed to work, and then like as an actor and all the writers, you're like, is this how it works?
Come on, man.
So what would happen is anyone who's in a time machine, right? They know how actual history is supposed to go, and then you'd return to the present, and then maybe something has changed, and whoever's there doesn't realize that things have changed, right? Because that's their normal timeline. So the way they brought me back was, they had a mission. They had to go into the past to chase Flynn. They chase him down to this particular path, but then they wound up being friends. And then Flynn uses the second time machine to go back into the past to stop something so that I'm brought back to life. So then the next day, when the other two who are still in that particular period of time are waiting, all of a sudden I bust in and save them because Flynn has changed everything, and now I'm back.
With an epic line.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. I got from a fake movie that Home Alone, that Macaulay Culkin is watching. Did you guys know this?
Yeah.
In Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin is watching some movie called like The Death of Angels or something like that, and it's some weird black and white gangster movie. And he goes, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animals." Apparently that movie's fake. That was made just for that one scene in Home Alone. I had no idea, but I found it out because I did research afterwards. But it was a weird thing where I was like, why am I... So you get the script, right? And you go like, wait, why do I suddenly exist here? And then like, how do I know? And then they know? How do they know that I was missing? Should they not know? And then like, what's my memory? And then like, we still went on this mission, and there's this weird thing, this like, where you kind of have to ignore the butterfly effect. I think our show ignored the butterfly effect in favor.
Well, I certainly ignored that.
Yeah.
Oh, Ashton.
I like that joke. So I think we did that in favor of most interesting plotline, which I think works because, like, again, no one knows how time travel works, right? Like in reality. So I think you just have to go with like what creative makes sense and what doesn't make people's heads explode. And another thing I learned is it's also a thing of like, you can only when you only want to pull out a sweat. I don't know if you guys are creators or just interested in time travel as a conceit or whatever, but it's just as a storyteller, it's one of those things where if you kind of have to guess what's going to bother the audience when you do a time travel thing, and you either have to remind them of the thing that makes the most sense, or just totally move past it and hope everyone moves past it. You know, so like I would always have every once in a while I would pitch where I would go like, I think I have to say that I don't know what the hell is going on here, so that the audience realizes that it makes sense that they don't know what the hell is going on here. Like I would just use my character.
Hanging up my internal.
Is that what it's called?
In the writer's room.
Yeah, that would. Now, is that positive or negative?
It's positive.
Okay, yeah. So I think I would try and do that where I would have a lot of like there was one time where so one of our characters is married to another character who like wound up dying, and so when we returned, everyone in headquarters usually knows everything. They didn't know everything, and they didn't clock it in the writers' room that these guys wouldn't know that this wife exists or not. So there's literally a line where I'm like, oh, this is wild. This is probably because you guys didn't join us on a time traveling trip, and now we're the only ones who know. That's crazy. So they like you have to like just give just a little bit of acknowledgement so that they go, okay, that's what was throwing me off, and now I know. But it's also a thing where you have to go like, do I acknowledge that, or will they just take the ride? Because if I mention too much, then they're going to start peeling.
That's the balance.
Yeah, they're going to start, pulling at the sweater and go, wait, if he does do that, blah, blah, blah. So, time travel is hard. I'm a huge fan of time travel things, from Better Off Ted to Doctor Who to Terminator, and there is not one movie that doesn't have a glaring time mistake completely. I mean, you look at Terminator, like, he goes back in time and gives birth to the guy who told him to go back in time. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, my favorite time travel thing is Better Off Ted. Not Better Off Ted.
Bill and Ted?
No, Bill and Ted. Yes, that makes more sense.
There was a Ted.
There was a Ted. It's Bill and Ted, and I wrote this. This is how a friend of mine became really good friends, because he got this reference. Was they're locked. They're like handcuffed or something like that outside the police, and they're like, look, how are we gonna get away? They're like, look, we just have to remember to leave the keys here under this rock so that we can escape. So just as long as after everything happens, we remember to go back in time and put the keys to the handcuff under the rock, we should be fine. Which, if you think about it for like more than 30 seconds, makes no freaking sense. Or is possible, but then you wonder, like, what if you do forget, right? Then, like, this whole adventure doesn't happen, like...
Hyper time.
Yeah. We use some hyper time. So it's crazy. You just have to do, like, if you're creating the story, you go, okay, what's the most logical sense I can make out of it, and then, like, kind of move on.
And I have a bit of a follow-up question, and I would like all the panelists to touch upon this. What if you go back in time and the history that you know is wrong?
Well, that was always our thing. We were always wrong, right? Because like,
Or the history's completely wrong, or there's nothing, or you don't know anything about it.
You mean like robots in the past?
Or just say, maybe, for instance, Roanoke. What happened to the colony in Roanoke?
Okay.
Or say, for instance, you see a picture of somebody who's been painted, and that's not who they actually are.
Yeah.
Or there's specific parts of history of famous civilizations where it's like, there's a gap there. And this is what was recorded, but something not there. And I'm just more curious about how you guys, you creators and actors, how would you deal with that? How would you handle it?
Well, my first thought is that if I'm going back in time, I'm going back for a purpose. And if this is not a mission critical thing to me, I'll be like, yeah, I got no time for your weird, because I do that in my regular life. So
That's a little TMI, dude.
I'm just saying there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens, and I can't stop for every crazy thing that happens. So especially, unless I have like, a very easily distracted character that I'm writing who's like, ooh, squirrel, then I'm probably going to be like, we have to stay focused on the mission. We have to save Betsy Ross or whatever the heck we're doing in time. I don't know. I'll take note of it, because there's my opinion on certain things. I'm like, oh, so there were like 9 guys with guns at the grassy knoll. Okay, sure. Moving on. I'll make just note of it, but I'll move pretty quickly past it.
That would be pretty much the same thing. It would depend on what's my purpose for going back. If my purpose for going back is somehow related to these other things, then I would get involved in it. But if it's not, then I have to just stay in line with what the mission is and just sort of go, oh, okay, so this person's president. okay, I gotta keep moving. Although I feel like I'm living that now.
Well played.
But yeah, I would just walk the line of what the mission is.
Okay.
I like how the mission focused this time travel team is.
We're writers. We gotta get the book done. We gotta get the show done.
I think the most elegant story that comes close to what you're saying was the original Star Trek's City on the Edge of Tomorrow.
Come on now, come on. Nerd cred.
And I think it was really elegant. It was so elegantly done because they managed to not just have, what would happen if this woman, Joan Collins' character, lives, bad things. Was Hitler or something?
Yeah, all kind of, yeah.
So really bad things happen, but then to have it set up where the person who loves her the most is the person who has to stop McCoy from, saving her. And the way they did that was really, really elegant because you were caring more about the love story than time. And sort of put the protagonist in a position where to win for the greater good, he must lose as an individual, or she must lose, someone who is well-meaning. That's a really great sacrifice.
That's one of my favorite episodes.
Was that the first time they cussed on prime time? Because that's when he says, "Let's get the hell out of here."
Maybe.
Another kind of historian.
I think it was
And then actually,
my first years.
and then actually, with that, you know what? Do any of you all have some questions you would like to ask our panel? Any questions?
You've even got a mic.
Yeah, we even have a mic, so if you want, come on up. Please ask some questions.
I know the Doctor Who's have already seen all the questions.
So yeah, come on down.
I got a question. I'm pretty loud as is, but you want me to still go to the mic?
I think they want you picked up on.
Yeah,
But we paid for it.
I see. Okay. Well, my question actually relates to. Thank you. I'm just gonna be up here trying my short self. But my question actually relates to where you guys might see the difference between alternate realities and time travel, because technically you can branch off into that thought process. And with the last question you just brought up, I was thinking, well, Sliders, the sci-fi TV show, they always talk about what could have happened. There's one really famous scene that always stuck in my mind when they went back and everybody was naked because, apparently the whole Adam and Eve thing didn't happen. They didn't go into that world, but they just showed, that small little highlight. So it's not really a time travel show, but it does talk about how slight things can be different. I guess it more goes into the butterfly effect. But where do you guys draw the line in your creative process of, are we going to go down these 5 paths, or are we going to just stick on this one timeline? Sorry, long question.
No, that's fine. No, thank you.
I feel like most time travel shows I know wind up dipping into the alternate timeline thing. It's kind of unavoidable. But yeah, like you said, Sliders wasn't a time travel show. That was an alternate universe show, which was awesome. I don't have anything to say about time travel. I just really like Sliders and My Secret Identity, which also starred Jerry O'Connell.
I think for me, those are really, while they can dovetail into each other, I think they're really separate for me. I think the alternate timeline is more Twilight Zone or What If kind of thing, which can result, you can splinter off obviously if you tamper with some things in terms of the linear movement of time. But a time travel story itself, for me, resonates more, in most instances, as a story on redemption. And I think that might be why it resonates with all of us on some level. It's sci-fi's version of how do we tell a story of redemption. And I think one of the ways that redemptive stories resonate with all of us, or that they're special with me as well, is because I think somewhere we all want a second chance. We all
What if is a horrible phrase. What if could be a horrible phrase.
Yeah. We all want to make something right. We all want to correct a mistake if we can. And I think what science fiction allows us to do through time travel, where you can go back and you can rescue JFK, or you could go back and you could rescue Dr. Martin Luther King, or you could go back and you could maybe assist with Harriet Tubman. You know, maybe you could go back and you could prevent Amelia Earhart from being lost. You know, there's so those are ways to sort of. I think it allows the viewer to go, well, much in the way redemptive stories do. They allow the viewer to participate, while in their personal lives they may not be able to make that mistake. They may not be able to correct that mistake, but they get to share in the catharsis of the actors and the storytellers, sort of tangentially, on what that feels like to have a mistake corrected. So I think that might be one of the reasons why it pulls us in.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, I like the way you said. It's funny, when I was doing Timeless, I always thought about the universality being regret, but I like redemption, because for me it was all like, hey, what do we all have something we wish we could change, you know what I mean? And that always resonated.
I'll answer very quickly because I know she wants to ask a question. In the book that I was working on, Time Court, the idea of the celestial bureaucracy is that time is endangered by crazy accidents and all kind of stuff that can happen. And their job as this hierarchy over all things, which was, you know, all the Greek gods, all the Egyptian gods, all the Celtic gods, they were all just corporate people who had directorships and jobs in this bureaucracy or whatever to maintain the structure of reality. So with that, the alternate timelines, they would see them and they would try to quash them as quickly as possible. So you're like, let's just shepherd you right back in there, and now we're back. Everybody's back on the same train. Keep rolling. And then they would have to do that throughout history and throughout eternity, which, you know, I work a corporate job, so I understand the cyclical nature of that sort of thing. And that
I used to be a corporate scumbag.
I respect your privacy. The nature of that was one thing that I tried to work into, the idea of this kind of office drama / comedy, as well as this time traveling adventure.
Captain Marvel?
Yes.
Yeah.
As regards to time traveling, I'm going to talk about the Spider-Verse. I know each author of the Spider-Verse portrays different characters very differently, but within time traveling, what do you propose, or what do you feel the author's intentions of each of the Spider universes?
Well, because I had to review a lot of Spider comics for my comic resources, and what it seemed like is that each one, using a time-related thing, went back to a certain point and said, this is different, and therefore that leads down this road. In this one, humans didn't become the dominant species. We have Spider Pig, you know, and that, sure, why not? Let's do it. And in this one, now we're going to have a giant robot, you know, Spider-Man. So that they would change one individual aspect and say, let's let that ripple emanate out and see how it gets to a spider that will ultimately end up in this movie. And as a writer, for me, that's a great exercise, because I'm like, all right, well, here's where I am. How did I get here? Let me track this back. Let me see where I got and what realities have to happen, because that informs so much about the character, that informs so much about their language, that informs so much about their culture and how they approach different things, and ultimately how they interact with other characters. So for me, I'm very fascinated by using it and looking at it in that regard.
Okay, and I've been looking at the clock, and we're kind of pretty much getting close to the end of our time. So before we go, why don't you please repeat to everybody who you are, what you're doing, where you can be found online, please. So, first up.
I'm Joel Thompson, writer-producer for television. I'm currently working on a few projects right now in development. My last show was Krypton, where I was co-EP. Look me up on Twitter. Joel Thompson, Jolier than thou.
I love that.
Hope to see you.
I'm Malcom Barrett, at Malcom Barrett, or at Verbal the Rapper on something.
Instagram.
Yeah, sure, all right. I don't know. I was on Timeless. I want to be in stuff, right?
And The Boys,
and The Boys, and Preacher. I'm going to be on Hulu's Into the Dark, and and in the Genius series. They're doing a Genius series on Aretha Franklin, and I'm going to be her.
Nice.
Right.
Nice.
I'm going to play her.
Sweet. My name is Hannibal Tabu. You can find me at Hannibal Tabu. That's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, the DNA of your best friends, carved in a rune in your backyard that you never saw, and on the inside of your carburetor. You can find me at HannibalTabu.com, operative.net, weekly reviews at comicresources.com. weekly at 5 p.m. on KQBHLP FM or LPFM.LA, wherever you are. And there's another, Nerdorama podcast on iHeartRadio Wednesdays by 9 a.m.
Yes. Anything else?
There are, but I can't remember.
WondermanComics.com, spelled like that. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out to the panel. Outside, please, because the next one's got to come in. Thank you.